Firstly, I'd like to welcome you all here in this melancholy month of Av to participate and commemorate in this special Shloshim gathering which has been organized in the memory of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The proceedings will be that first we will learn through the students of the Rebbe, who are the students of the yeshiva, the Mishnayis, a Mishnah, for each of the letters of the Rebbe's name, as it is brought down in Sforim that it is customary to do. That will be led by Rabbi Lida, the director and principal of the Yeshiva Primary School. Following that, one of the students of the Yeshiva Gedola, the Yeshiva Gedola, which has been established by the Rebbe a few years ago, and both Yeshiva Gedolas, both here in Melbourne and in Sydney, are and have been established at the inspiration of the Rebbe Shlita, the Rebbe. And after the siyum that will be said by one of those students, which is a siyum of Mishnayis, of the entire Shisha Sidra Mishnah, which has been divided up amongst those of us living in Sydney, Rabbi Leshes, the Rosh Yeshiva of the Yeshiva Gedola here in Sydney, will be Messiahing Shas, will be Messiahing the entire Talmud Bavli, which has been divided up between the students of the Rebbe, both in Melbourne and in Sydney. So therefore we'll be doing Mishnayis firstly, and a siyum on all Shisha Sidra Mishnah, and then a siyum on the entire Talmud Bavli, followed by the special Kaddish which is said at the time of the siyum. So I'd like to call upon Rabbi Lida to have the boys recite Mishnayis. You will find the Mishnayis in the booklets that are on your places.
In starting with the Mishnah Mem, the Mishnah is going to be with the Oisius of the Rebbe's name. And we start with the Mishnah Mem, which is the first Mishnah in Brochus, David Bauer.
You'll find it on the third page.
I'll take us for a stranger, and to the end of the spot, Stephen, Rabbi Lezer, this is Rabbi Lezer, the Chom, the Chom, say, Chates, Tero, Mina, Al Gamel, Al Gamel, said, actually, I'm on Shachar, the morning star goes up. Maisa, Shabbat, we have the son's cake. The basic issue from the place of the party, on the way they said to they can Rishma, we've not Rishma, the morning star has not yet come up. Chayim, she must Rishma, those are written up, not in this case they say, Ela Komasha Machon, but everything which Chacham said, Mitzvahs Ad Shalom Shachar, the mitzvahs until the morning star comes up. Hek the Chalopim, the faster environment they live. Mitzvahs Ad Shalom Shachar, mitzvahs until the morning star comes up. The Chol and Chol and Minachar, and all that is eaten on one day. Mitzvahs Ad Shalom Shachar, mitzvahs until the morning star comes up. If Kamish the Roma, Chom, why the Chom say Achatos until Chatzos, the day laughing as I don't know to keep a man away and away from the veil.
Thank you, David. And the Mishnah Nun, Mishnah Nisa Chaman Ketzad, by Yisrael Rebbe.
Nisa Chaman Ketzad, how is the water pouring seven before it's a Lubavitcher as well? A golden jug, Machazekah Shloshim, Order for looking, Hayom Amlei, Min HaShliach, was filled from the Shliach Paul. He gave a Sharamayim. When they arrived at the water gate, they sounded the Tokova, Tekiah, all above Mark Ebesh, or finding its floodlight. He went up the ramp and turned to his left, Shnes following Shokes following Shom. Were there two silver balls, and Yoram, Abdulaziz, Shil Sid, they were all plaster, Hayorella, Shal Mushcharim, Kanay, Mibnei, Hayayin. But the services were blackened because of the wine, or the carbon coming Shnechotomim, and they each had a hole like a narrow spout, to keep one wide, Maroba Bechor, and the other narrow, dark, so that Kadesh will Shnei and Carly and both rings we had together, Babas Achas, the one to the west, Marabi, Shomain, what's for water, Mizrachi Shalayim, and that to the east for wine, Eroshomayim, if wine emptied out together that for water, the such Shalayim into the one for one, that for one, into the one for water, Yatzah was loud, Abirah, says below, Hayom with one leg, they could carry out the whole ceremony, Kol Shmoyno, 48 days, but Nasrech going Loi, and the person who used to do the pouring, they would say, Hagol Yadach Shapam Achas, raise your hand because on one occasion, this Echad, Al-Gabirak will be poured over his feet, Muru, Kama, Vesregayan, and all the people threw them this argument.
Thank you, Suli. And the Mishnah with the Ois Ches, Chavile Kash, Tzal Verov.
Chavile Kash, Balus Shova, Chavile Yekter, Balus Avud, Chavile Shoy, Balus of Yavin Shu, Sarah Sachimaher, Kilka, Sugar, the whole roller, Shakira, Sarah Toy, Sarah Sakasha, the whole roller, Sarah Sakasha, the Ferris to the walls.
Thank you, Tzal, for the Ois Mem. Sachim Nesorim, David Lido.
Sachim Nesorim, Sachim Nesorim, Rabbi these are words of Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Meir, so Rabbi Meir forbids, not something that we put in, Nesor Kaisha, which is Rachav wide, Abba Tafachim, Fat Tafachim, Cherries, Fat, Lofa, Except Shloshim, Shum Sik Tachta, Bamir.
Thank you, David. And for the mem of the second name, we have the first Mishnah Megillah. Megillah Nika is by Lady Lashes.
Megillah Nika is the Megillah is read by Achar Asr on the 11th of Adar, B'Shnayim Asr on the 12th of Adar, B'Shlosh Asr on the 13th of Adar, B'Arba Asr the 14th of Adar, B'Chamish Asr on the 15th of Adar, Loi Pachash No, Wali Loi Yosef, not like a cracking Hamel Coffin, Choimos, town surrounded by a wall, Moshe Shul Ben Nun, from the time of Yeshua Ben Nun, Karim, Achamish Asr, on the 15th, foreign villages by Yosh, Kedolis, and big city, Karim, Baba Asr, on the 14th, Elashak, foreign Maktimin, but the villagers read it early, the Yom on the day of the gathering.
Thank you, Lady. And for the Ois Ayin, Aloha Gizula, is behind Barbara.
Rav Gezula and Rav Dora Vivation Dryap Sula as possible. Shall share a tree such as Rav and Shalira and Dakas and Ravasida pushed away Sula. It is possible. The vibration and start was cut off, different to Aleha. Its leaves were falling off at top to fall, and its mountain willows Sula is possible. Commercial with the triple top, which lush room brings us a ladder and some of the things were falling off. The shell, bow, or if it grew in a field, Sarah is caution.
Thank you. And for the Ois Nun, Noshim V'Avodim, Noshim Libuman.
Noshim Libuman, V'Avodim, and Snows, Sukkatanim, and children betrayed, and the Sukkah, Pasha from the Sukkah. Kotam et Sha'al, Shemet Shachima, that tells me this one, I have a sukkah, must be in the sukkah. Masa story, the other Kalosa, Shama is up in the Jotum of Shama, the other guy, but for Kessas Moses, when he opened up the pasta, was a guy, and Potsdach, I'll go on top of the baby show, cut on the second child.
Ik wil nog hebben voor de eerste tijd. Moest zo eens weer scheiteren.
The most tourist Lebanon pictures of forms of moons high and low. The Rabban Gamliel belongs to Rabban Gamliel, the tableau of the case of Rabbi Yosef on the board and also on the web or on the wall of his attic, which will be hidden Mara that we then be showed, as had Jotos, the owner, the simple people, and said, Hakazebra Isa Ogazed, did you see like this or like this? Master Shabbat Shnaim Amro, it happened that two Adim came and said, Renu Shakras B'Mizrach, we saw it in the morning in the east of the Arvis B'Mar, and the evening in the west. Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri said, Edi Shekaraim, they are false Adim, Kushabal the Yabnik, then they came to Yabnik, Ibn Rabbi Gamliel accepted them. The Shnaim Amro also once two Adim came and said, Ranu Bismane, we saw it in its time of Lel Ibure Dainira at the night of the 31st, it wasn't seen. The Kidron, Rabban Gamliel accepted them. Amar Rabbi Dosta ben Harkinas, Rabbi Dosta ben Harkinas said, Any Shekaraim, false witnesses they are. Idim Al Isha, how they testify about a woman. She allotted that she gave birth to Lamako Karesa ben Chanel, and the next day she is pregnant. Amanda Rabbi Yeshua said to him, Raya Adigas Baracha, I see your words.
Yerushalayim, the last Mishnah Rule of Agozu Vayovish, who is Lamed, Yerushalayim Zalman, Shloshim Menashe, Shloshim.
Lulav Lulav, which was robbed by Yavesh and Drenah apostle. Shalashera, she does worship, Shalaradacha, and of the city has pushed away apostle. Nita Russia, Yitzim shoved off, Nifru Allah, the seas are broken off, apostle. Nifru Allah, the seas are separated, kosher. Rabbi Yehuda says, Yakdina Milamayla, you should tie from above, see the Harabazel, Pamachas from Harabazel, Ksher, Sakosha, Lulav, Sheish Bay, then Azina, Shloshim Vachim, three to Vachim, Kadei, in order that Lanayaboy to shake with it, kosher. It is kosher.
Shloshim Menashe, thank you to all the boys for the Chazar Mishnahs.
We now call upon Tomim Rosh Levine to the Messiah, the Mishnayos. In the final Mishnah, in the chapter of Uktzin, which is the last in the section of Taharas, the Mishnah teaches as follows. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, Asat HaKadosh Baruch Hu lehanchel l'chol tzadik v'tzadik shlosh meis v'asara lamis. The Almighty is destined to bequeath to each and every righteous person in this world 310 worlds. Shenamar, as it is said, L'hanchel alihav yesh, or it's resehem amayim. That I may cause those that love me to inherit substance, and that I may throw out treasuries. In the simple text, taking the key word yesh in this verse, which has the numerical value of 310, we deduce that each and every righteous person is destined to receive 310 worlds as a reward for their righteousness. The Rambam, however, in his commentary on the Mishnah, explains that this word yesh, with its numerical value of 310, actually refers to the pleasures of Olam Haba, the world to come.
which are 310 times greater than any of the pleasures in this current world, Elam Hazeh. As the Rebbe has explained many times in Sichas and in Maimarim, this phrase, lahanchel, to inherit, denotes a very special relationship between the person bequeathing and the person inheriting. It is a term which is used only in family circles where an inheritance takes place, and this refers to the very close and dear relationship, the unique relationship between HaKadosh Baruch Hu, our Father in heaven, and his children, the Jewish nation, Klal Yisrael. To continue, Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta. Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta says, "Le'matza HaKadosh Baruch Hu kani machzik bracha Yisrael ela hashalom." When looking for some sort of vessel into which he could manifest the blessings of the Jewish nation, the only such vessel that HaKadosh Baruch Hu found was shalom, peace. Shenemar, as it says, Hashem oiz la'amo yitein, the Almighty will give strength unto his people. Hashem yivarech esamay hashalom, the Almighty will bless his people with peace. Salek Meseches Uktzin, Mishnah Seder Taharis, Hadon Alach Shisa Sidra Mishnah. In the conclusion, may the Almighty HaKadosh Baruch Hu grant each and every one of us the strength, the urge to persevere in fulfilling the Rebbe's lifelong ambition in bringing Mashiach, so that once again we will all be reunited together with the Rebbe in Yerushalayim in the very near and immediate future. Amen.
Before I call upon Rav Aleshis, I've been asked to announce that for those children or babies who the emotion of the moment is such that they can't help but cry, there is downstairs special provisions so that they should be able to watch with their parents without disturbing the proceedings. I'd like to call now upon Rav Aleshis to Messiah Talmud Bavli.
The Gemara says in the end of Perik Asir of Nido, Omar le Rav Shmuel le Rav Abba. Rav Shmuel says to Rav Abba, Heimo be'imote v'zovo b'layla v'nido. Maybe the impurity of Zovo could be only if it's happening in the day, and the Nido only the night. Omar le, he told them, Alecha Omar Akro, this is what the Pasuk says, Al Nidoso, Somuch le Nidoso, this is what the Pasuk says, that have to be close to the time of Nido, Somuch le Nidoso, Emasav be'layla, v'chakor lo Zovo. And when this can be only in the night, after the 7 days of Nido, and nevertheless the Pasuk only in the Zohar. And the Gemara continuing concludes, Tonot ve'Eliyahu, the land of the Yeshiva of Eliyahu, Kol Hashana Aloches B'chol Yoim, Muvtach Moshe B'nei Lomar. Everybody which learns Aloches every day, it's promised to him that he will come to the next world. Shenemar, like says, Alicho Sel Avloi, Al Tikri Alicho Sel Aloches. Like the Pasuk says, that Alicho Sel Avloi is, you should not read with the word Alichois from the walking, but with the word Aloches means to say learning Aloches. In a siyum which the Rebbe spoke around 25 years ago, it's in Likud Sichos volume 14. The Rebbe made a siyum on the Shas and made the connection between the end of the Gemara in Nideh and the beginning of the Shas in Broches, Me'amos HaKor in the Shema Ve'arim. And the Nekuda of the Siyum, the Rebbe explained that the message which we are learning from Me'amos HaKor in the Shema Ve'arim is that with the Koyach of Torah and the Koyach of Aloches, we can go through even such periods of time which are very difficult, and we can compare them to night. Because the difference between day and night is that in the day we have the light and everything looks clear and bright. And in the night is a time of Ahelem ve'Esther. It's a time when you can't see clearly what's going around and things look to be difficult. And this is what the Pasuk says, that that with this koyach of learning Krishma, is we can go through not only the day but the night also. And the Rebbe explained that this is the connection to the end of the Gemara, which now we learned. That the Pasuk says, the Gemara says, Alicha Yisrael Olam Loi, that with the Koyach of Halacha, we can go through the world in a proper way, and we can do everything the way that the Almighty wants. And the Rebbe explains that we know the difference between halachas and learning Gemara, that learning Gemara and Pilpulim, not every time the person is mechaven la'amitos shel Torah. Not always will be the way how the person understood, or the way that the pupil went. But when we are speaking about halachas, in halacha we have only one. Because even though that Eilu ve'Eilu ten divrei Elokim Chaim, all opinions which we can find in Torah, they are correct and they are right, nevertheless, halacha is only one. And that's the power of halacha, that with halacha, this is what the Gemara says, halacha is all roy, that with halacha we can go through the world in a proper manner. And says the Rebbe that that's also the connection to the previous paragraph in the Gemara which we read before about Nida and Zohar. Because even though that the Maharsha explains that why the Gemara puts in the last paragraph is because always you have to finish with Divrei Shevach ve'Nechama, you have to finish up with Inyoni from Tanchumim. Nevertheless, as the Maharsha, must be some of a connection to the previous paragraph. And the connection here, explains the Rebbe, that all the union of impurity which we have in this world, it's a result of the first sin of Chet Etz Hadas. Like the Gemara says clearly that this is the results. And therefore, impurity exists in the world. In impurity itself, there are two levels. There is the normal impurity, and this is additional impurity, which this is the difference between Nida and Zohar. And therefore, in the Sarkadayim of the Gemara thought that maybe that all the concept of Zohar could be only in the daytime. Means to say that in the night, when it's difficult, maybe it's naturally that some people become impure. Means to say it's obviously understood that somebody can drop down a level, but in the day, no. And therefore, in the night, maybe it's only a time when possible to be Zohar. Only in the day it's possible to be Zohar. And this is what the Gemara continued, that that's not exactly so. Because with the koyach of Torah, we can make sure that not only the day will be pure the way that the Almighty wants, but even in the night should be the way that the Almighty wants. And therefore, if impurity happen to be, this is a special union which a person have to do a proper tshuva. And the Rebbe explains that that's the reason why I go to the halacha, dafke on Zohar, midoraisa, is there the union of Shivonikim, because this is showing of a greater yerida, and therefore the aliyah, the elevation, should be greater, and the tshuva should be deeper. And therefore should take 7 clean days to do the proper tshuva. And this is the connection to the next paragraph. That the next paragraph wants also to tell us that with the koyach of the Torah, the koyach of halachas, we can go through all the tkufas, all the times, even these times of night. And the Rebbe concludes that this is the Lashon of the Maharsha, that what the Levim are showing, and the same also in Gemara, always we are finishing up the Indian with Divrei Shvach ve'Tanchumim. Means to say that we have the koyach to have the proper nechama, and let's hope that we'll have really the proper nechama of the Churban Beis HaMikdash, and all the Inyanim, and everything will be really revealed into great Geula, and all of us together will be able to see the Geula Amitis V'Ashleim. Adon Allah Maseres Nida B'chol HaShas Vad V'cholam Daiton Allah Maseres Nida B'chol HaShas V'daiton Olam Daiton Cholom V'stash Minach Maseres Nida B'chol HaShas V'stash Minach Lo Be'al Modei Lo Be'al Modei Osei Adon Allah Maseres Nida B'chol HaShas Vad V'cholam Daiton Allah Maseres Nida B'chol HaShas V'daiton Cholom V'stash Minach Maseres Nida B'chol HaShas V'stash Minach Lo Be'al Modei Lo Be'al Modei Osei Also noch Masechtas Nida b'chol hashas v'odach cholon dait, noch Masechtas Nida b'chol hashas dait cholon. Snash minach Masechtas Nida v'snash minach v'bal modeh v'lo bal modeh osik. Yirotzu l'fanei chadnei elenu v'lav sem shtei terot, yirotzu mamotenu v'ilo mazeh seimanu l'ilo mabo. Chalino ba'popo Rami ba'popo Nachman ba'popo Achoi ba'popo Abon bo ba'popo Rafon ba'popo Rosh ba'popo Socha ba'popo Ade ba'popo Tov ba'popo. Al no adnei elenu izdevei seroska b'finu b'fi Yisrael Chok Yisrael v'niyah Nachman v'tzetzeinu v'tzetzeinu Chok Yisrael kulam v'yidei shalom kulam d'Yisrael v'secho. Le'im ha'itchak benim v'tzetzeinu ki le'ilom v'livi v'livi v'savim b'chokyecha l'olam v'yev shloim v'mosh kapti v'dam ki yivam chi yisonim. Bo v'chato adnei adnei chokyecha Amen 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 tzela voye. Medim אנחנו לפני אחד אלו ולעשות ששמת חלקנים יש ובשמת ששמת חלקנים יש בקונס. שון המשקימים ומשקימים, און המשקימים דיבר תאר ומשקימים דבר תארים, און המיילים והם המיילים. און המיילים מקם שכר והם המיילים והם מקם שכר, און רוצים והם רוצים. און רוצים חיים אמר והם רוצים והשאר של המערות, והם תורדם והשאר הזה, שדום ימור וקצרים ואני אפתח בו. ורוצים לפני אחד אלו ראי כשם שזרתנו לסיים הסרט נידה בכל השעה וכן תעזרו לו להסכים למסכת ספורם אחר ולסיים בלי, ודאי לא לשמור להסיס וקיים שכל דברי ספורט תלמוד יוסכו בהבו. וזכות פרטנו אינם ומסתלמידי חכמים יעמדנו ולזרנו ושלוטנו ושתירו ופינו ופיזרנו וזרנו עדינו וסיסקאים בנו מסענו לכבותם חיי ישחו ושלום לך תשמוע עליך וקיצס תשחכו כי בדרך ורב וסיפוך שני שחיים ערך וימינו בסמל אשר בחולל אדוני עזלם וייתן אדוני יבור עשנו ושולם
Skada Obi, Skada Shemei Rabo, Yom Yivotohu Osip, Yischadeto, Vachayim, Esayo, Vasokol, Chay Omo, V'mivne Kat, Yerushalayim, V'shachol Hechel, V'gavo, V'lumekat, V'chonon V'chro, Me'aro, V'asovu, V'chonon V'shmai, V'asrei, V'yamlut Kutshu Brichu, V'malchusei, V'yikore, V'yasma, V'chone, V'yikore, V'shichei, V'chayek, V'yom Echan, V'chay Decho V'Yisro, V'agolo V'zmakore, V'imro, Amen. V'hei Shmei Rabo, V'borach, V'yom V'yom V'yisboret, V'yishtabach, V'yisper, V'yisramo, V'yisnase, V'yisado, V'yisale, V'yisalo, Shmei Kudisho, V'lichu, V'yelo, Mikol V'chaso, V'shirazo, V'chasa, V'nechamaso, Da'amiron, V'yolmo, V'imro, Amen. Aliso, V'aramonim, Al Tamidehem, V'al Kol Tamidei Salmidehem, V'al Kol Mondos, Im Be'iraisa, Ivasra Adem Livachol Asav Asar, Yehei Eloheinu L'chaim Shlom Rabo, Chinu V'chizdo, Rachamim V'chayin Richinu, V'zen Ruvicho, Furkono, Mikodom Avuin V'ishmaya V'imro Amen. Yehei Shlom Rabo Min Shemaya V'chaim Toim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imro Amen. Oiseh Shalom B'imremo V'yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imro Amen. At this time, it would normally be appropriate to welcome individually all the Rabbonim that are here, the presidents of congregations, and the various communal leaders that have gathered here in honor of the Rebbe. However, precisely because of the occasion that it is, all of us are equal. There is no one more mechubed or more honored or deserving of any more mention than anybody else. And we all here equally mourn and honor the memory of the Rebbe. On behalf of the Rabbinate of Sydney, I call upon Rabbi Apple as representative of that Rabbinate to say a few words.
It must have been about 2 weeks ago that we received a letter from our older daughter who lives in Yerushalayim, who wrote about how she, who is not a Lubavitcher, has not been brought up in a Hasidic household, but is the daughter of parents who brought her up with respect for Torah and respect for people of Torah. She wrote to us that the news of the passing of the Lubavitcher Rebbe brought her and her husband and children tremendous sadness because, to quote her words, he was the last of the Gedolei Hador, the last of the great leaders of the generation. I ask myself the question, what generation is it of which my daughter says he was the last of the Gedolei Hador? It is the post-Holocaust generation, the generation in which we would have been forgiven for imagining that Judaism was finished, that Orthodox Judaism in particular would never rise again, and that Kaddish should be said, God forbid, for our people and our tradition. And yet, we have the teaching, Lo Alman Israel. Israel is never entirely bereft. And the evidence that Lo Alman Israel in our generation has been the blessing which the Almighty has given us in the Gedolim, who have been like stars in these 50 years, stars shining again in order to show the way for the rebirth and the resurgence of the Jewish people and of Judaism. If one were to try to list the Gedolei Hador, one would, I believe, have to take a lesson out of a story of Chaim Nachman Bialik, who speaks about the Almighty being angry with the people of Israel for their neglect of the Torah and demanding that they send back to him the Torah and all the books of Torah learning, because they failed to learn them, to appreciate them, to love them, to live by them. And wagon load after wagon load of books, Sfarim, manuscripts and writings wended their way back to heaven. The procession was endless. The Almighty was comforted because Lo Alman Israel, because Israel was not bereft, and perhaps his judgment had been too hasty in imagining that Torah was finished. If one were to say that the procession of Gedolei Hador in these 50 years has been so long and so impressive that we could not name or even purport to name all of those who were members of that procession, it's already impressive. The history may well decide that of all of the Gedolei Hador, the Rebbe was, as my daughter suggests, the most phenomenal Jewish teacher and leader of our century. Leadership everywhere these days is generally mediocre, perhaps because the mystique has been taken away by the media and the immediacy of the way in which every leader is seen and judged and found wanting. And yet the genius of the Rebbe was that those very same media that destroyed the mystique of other leaders, in fact, enhanced and reinforced his. His leadership was based on learning, yes, on intellect, on Yirat Shamayim, on the capacity to inspire, to lead, and to organize. I would suggest that above all, his leadership was exceptional and unique because of a flaring intuition of our generation. This generation of the post-Holocaust years was a generation in which Jews had to find their way home to Judaism. Despite the events that threatened Jewish faith and continuity and identity and commitment, Jews had to be found and Jews had to find Judaism. If any one leader has succeeded in finding Jews and in leading Jews to find their Judaism, it was this leader. We Mitnagdim can perhaps never quite understand the exact nature of the bond between a Rebbe and his Hasidim. Sometimes we are critical at what we see to be certain excesses of enthusiasm. But there is no debate amongst Hasidim or amongst Mitnagdim There is no debate about the most crucial thing of all, which is that this Rebbe changed the face of the Jewish world more than did any other figure. There has been ample debate in recent years as to whether this is or is not the Messianic generation. Whether this is the Messianic generation, or how messianic this generation is. I believe the truth is that his achievement is truly messianic in stirring the spiritual awakening of countless people, making Jewish ideas and ways a talking point wherever Jews are and far beyond the Jewish world. My daughter is right. The last of the Gedolei Hador, perhaps the most phenomenal of all. So in the name of a grateful Jewish people, we salute his achievement, we salute his memory. Yehi Zichro Baruch. His memory will be a blessing. His memory will certainly ensure, in the most literal sense, Uva L'Tzion Go'el, that the Redeemer, the Messiah, will come, please God, in our generation.
I'd like to now call upon my father to address us.
I do not represent any Lubavitcher institution. I haven't got the right to speak on behalf of the Lubavitcher movement. I am a private individual who has been struggling for most of his life to elevate himself to a worth to be able to call himself a chassid of the Rebbe, just as his father did before him, and my grandfather did before that. And therefore, the loss that I feel is so great that it is nigh impossible for me to speak. I imagine that Rabbi Feldman invited me to come along here this evening because I'm his father-in-law, and because he knew that if he said that by my presence speaking this evening, the Rebbe's covenant may be enhanced, despite the difficulty, I would come along and try to say something. Most of you will not be able to understand, and I haven't got the language or the eloquence to be able to explain to you the feelings that those who regarded themselves as Hasidim of the Rebbe, Areni Kaporas Mishkove, the feelings and the bond that there was between us. And therefore, it will be very difficult for me to tell you exactly how we feel. And I stand in awe, and I'm literally trembling, that when speaking about a person like that, I must be careful with every word that I utter, so that no word should come out of my mouth that, God forbid, will diminish his glory. And I therefore decided that I will not give my own thoughts. I cannot help but speak with my own words and my own tongue. But the thoughts I express, minutely only, of the deep feelings that I and those others who call themselves Hasidim of the Rebbe feel, and I have taken for myself a past historic event which I will compare to this our era. About 1800 years ago, there was a great person in the non-Jewish world, led by the Emperor of Rome, Antoninus, called him Rebbe Yehuda HaNossi, Rebbe Yehuda the Prince, or Rebbe Yehuda the President. His disciples, his Hasidim, his pupils, called him Rabbeinu HaKodesh, the Holy Rebbe. The general public just called him Rebbe. He was the author of the Mishnah that we made as seen before. He lived in Eretz Yisrael. In the latter part of his life, he was very ill. Then on a Friday, an Erev Shabbos came, and he was lying on his deathbed. His disciples and pupils could not accept and did not believe that their Rabbeinu HaKodesh could die. So much so that they cried out, "Anyone who will say the words that Rabbeinu HaKodesh has died will be pierced with a sword." Until Bar Kapora entered into his room, and when he saw that there was Yetzias Neshama, he came out to the audience outside, he rent his garments, and he said the following words: Mitzukim ve'erelim, the mortal world and the angelic world, Tofsu be'arin HaKodesh, grabbed hold of the own holy ark, referring to Rebbe. They had a tug of war. The Govro Yad Erelim Imar, the angelic world overcame mortal men. They tosfu esaron HaKodesh, and they grabbed hold the holy ark, miyodeinu hamtzukim, from us mortal men. Do you mean to say he is dead? Said the crowd outside. He said, I never said those words. The bond, the love, the awe that we had for the Lubavitcher Rebbe was such that we were not prepared and still cannot believe that he was taken from us. Het regen God voor mij. They overpowered us. And took him away. And we have no option but to say, Baruch Dayan Oenes. People come over to me and say, friends, well-intentioned people, Reb Chaim or Rabbi Gutnik, we have to carry on. Darf sich starten. We have to strengthen ourselves. They mean well, but to me, the words are so trite that instead of comforting me, make me uncomfortable. Of course, we will carry on. Of course, we will continue living, but I have the honor of having served a community that most of them are either survivors of the Holocaust or family of survivors of the Holocaust. If they carried on, if they continue to live, if they continue to build, then we will of course also. Life has in it an urgency to want to continue. And of course, I will continue to eat because life demands it. I'll put on tefillin, and I'll learn Torah, and I'll continue to work for Yiddishkeit because Judaism demands it. But for us, it's not the same world as it was 30 days ago. Then there was a man, a holy man, who lived in New York and spread his holiness, whether we were conscious of it or not, spread his holiness throughout the world. Then there was a sun that shone upon the world. Today, the sun has darkened. The Baal Shem Tov had a Talmud called Pinchas Koretzer. Pinchas Koretzer had a few sons. Just before he was leaving this world, he called over his sons and he said to them, I want you to respect your oldest brother. Not only because you are mechuyev, you are obliged according to the Torah to respect your older brother just as you are obliged to respect your parents, but because your older brother was born in the time of the Baal Shem Tov. And therefore the aura, the holiness, some of it entered into your oldest brother. You were born after that. Therefore he has a blessing of superiority over you which you haven't got. Our lives cannot be the same. The world to us cannot be the same. And sometimes a thought passes through my mind. How will my little grandchildren How will they grow up without having the thrill and the pleasure and the holiness of having a Rebbe? And if you think I am being dramatic, I turn once again to the life story of Rabbeinu HaKodesh. And they tell us that after he died, can you imagine what was left? There were other Tanoim, Amoraim in his time, great men of stature, fathers and leaders of the Jewish people who have left us an inheritance beyond belief. Yet in his generation, when he's died, these same rabbis cried out, Mishemeis Rebbe Botlo Gdusha mi Yisrael. There weren't holy people then, other than Rebbe? But he was of such stature of holiness that you couldn't compare the Gdusha that existed subsequently to what existed when he was alive. Mishemeis Rebbe Botlo Anova, humility disappeared. Mishemeis Rebbe Botlo Iras Chet, the fear of sin, disappeared. There are Baruch Hashem still tzaddikim left, still Talmidei Chachomim left. The world will never be the same because the physical presence of the Lubavitcher Rebbe has been taken by the angelic world. That is the deep feelings of loss that I and many like me have. And it's only right and proper that we should cry out to Hashem Yisborach, that He should know how we feel. And we cry out from the depths of our hearts, Ein lonu menachem. We have no comfort. Elohim, one is not allowed, or one should not, say things about the dead person which the dead person could not say himself. I think to myself, if we had the schus of listening to him once again, what would he say to us? I don't want to avoid the subject, however controversial it is. And I have been taught that the best lie is the truth. And I want to say a few words about the question of Mashiach. It's been a topic that has created great euphoria amongst the Hasidim of the Rebbe. It has also created sometimes a bit of frenzy. It has brought a lot of criticism and sometimes also a bit of ridicule. For those who ridicule, for those who snicker and laugh, they would snicker and laugh at any part of Judaism probably. Or that Judaism is so weak that one of the fundamental principles is even weaker. But the fact is that even well-intentioned and authorized criticism about the Inyan of Mashiach was based purely on ignorance by those who criticized us. There were three concepts that Lubavitcher spread around the world. One was the belief of Mashiach, his advent, which is a fundamental principle of our faith and which has kept us going since the first Tisha B'Av. The second was the fact that the advent of Mashiach is imminent. And the third, which I never heard from the Rebbe himself, but which Hasidim, by their intense devotion, tried to point out that the Rebbe was Mashiach. It's not a new thing. It's not something that developed now. Here's the story once again of Rabbeinu HaKodesh. And it says here, brings a Gemara in Sanhedrin, that Rabbeinu HaKodesh, in his latter years, had a Talmud called Rav. And Rav said the words, Im Moshiach b'chaim, if Moshiach is a living person, Hu Rabbeinu HaKodesh, he is my teacher, Rabbeinu HaKodesh. Anyone who knows a little bit of Gemara knows that pages in Gemara Sanhedrin tells you of Amoraim who pointed out that their Rebbe was Mashiach. Anyone who knows the history of Hasidism know that Hasidim always pointed the finger at their Rebbe, that he was the Mashiach. And as he says in Sefer Beis Rebbe, it was out of great love and respect and awe that they had for the Rebbes that they felt that the highest compliment they can pay him is to say that he was their Rebbe, that he was their Mashiach. The only thing maybe that we do not find in history is that there was a campaign to spread it to others, to point out to others who were not the particular disciples of that Rebbe, to point out to them or try to influence them that their Rebbe was Mashiach. Nothing has changed. We will cry out, and I hear the Rebbe prompting me to say, tell the Jewish people that everyone has to say the words Ani ma'amin b'emunah shlema b'vias HaMashiach. I believe with perfect faith in the coming of Mashiach, ve'af al pi she'yismameah, and even though he tarries in kol zeh, achake le b'chol yom she'yavai, despite the criticism and the ridicule, Jews must believe in Mashiach. They do believe in Mashiach. It's that belief that has got us through all the Holocausts and the pogroms and the suffering. I don't doubt the Rebbe's words one iota when he said the coming of Mashiach is imminent. I would have liked it to be in his lifetime. If it is not so, the Mashiach will come and the dead will rise from their grave, and all those who came before us will join us in the liberty and the redemption that will come. We do not anymore make a campaign that our Rebbe is Moshiach, whatever our individual feelings and thoughts may be. But we will never drop. We will never give up. The campaign for Moshiach as such, because from the first day that the Lubavitcher Rebbe ascended the throne of becoming the Rebbe, to the last moment of his life, his very being, his essence, his whole aim in life was to bring about the Messianic era, not for any glory for himself or even for his Talmidim and Hasidim, but for the benefit of the Jewish people and the whole of mankind. Because that is, was, and will be the aim of the whole of creation. And if God created a world, it was for the purpose of the Messianic era. And Var Hashem Yokum Lo'olam, the words of God are eternal and will be fulfilled. One should never conclude one's words without words of nechama and comfort. We made a siyum on Mishnayos. The last Mishnah is not really found in the old editions of Mishnayos. It was inserted in later years in order that the Mishnayos should finish off with something pleasant. Shas, that we made a siyum in Shas, those are not Talmud Eliyahu, is not found in all the editions of Shas. It was inserted later on in order that we should finish off with something of nechama. And therefore I feel obliged also, even though it is days of mourning, but after every 3 weeks, and after the 9 days, and after a Tisha B'Av, there comes a Shabbos Nachamu. I believe that good days are coming. It is a Hasidic tradition that when a man has finished his life, at the moment of his death, he achieves all those things which he was not able to achieve during his lifetime. Therefore, I believe that the Lubavitcher Rebbe will ascend the throne of heaven and will refuse to enter into Gan Eden until such time as he gets an assurance from the Almighty that redemption is going to be implemented for his people and for humanity. I believe that we have a debt to fulfill. A man like Rebbe Apple stood up, not a Lubavitcher, spoke on behalf of the rabbis of Sydney. Somebody else spoke on behalf of the rabbis in Melbourne. In New York, somebody else speaks on behalf of the rabbinate in New York. Throughout the Jewish world, apart from a small minority, everyone acknowledges the greatness of the work and achievements of the Lubavitcher Rebbe for the Jewish people and for the non-Jewish world. And therefore I think not only Lubavitch, But every Jewish person who has some care for the future of the Jewish people owes him a debt. We won't fulfill that debt only by weeping and mourning, although we can't help it, that's how we feel. But we have a debt to finish off the work which he so ardently began. And I quote the same words as the author of the history of Rabbeinu HaKodesh writes. Rabbeinu HaKodesh, he says, went up to heaven. But what a heritage he left for the Jewish people. The essence of Torah Sheba'al Peh, which has guided and inspired the Jewish people since the destruction of the temple. And he pleads at the end, please, remove all differences, quarrels, prejudice and hate from among you. Unite together to fulfill his words, to fulfill your needs, to fulfill the desire of humanity. Make this world a godly world. There were many tzaddikim before the Lubavitcher Rebbe. There are tzaddikim after him. They all endeavor to try and elevate the individuals they come in contact to lift them up to heaven. You know what the Lubavitcher Rebbe tried to do? He tried to bring heaven down here on earth. Let us help him. Let his Talmidim, those who are his Hasidim, for a little while stop concentrating on others and concentrating on themselves. Let there be Shloshim amongst Hasidei Chabad. We mentioned before the Siyam HaMishnayos. The first Lubavitcher Rebbe said in Lekutei Torah that Shas begins with Mem and ends with Mem. It begins with a Mem Psucha, an open Mem, and finishes off with the word Shalom, a final Mem. We go through Golus with an open Mem which begins the words Me'emosai. We have questions, we have queries, we have doubts, we have difficulties. That is the price of Golus. But we'll finish off with the word Shalom, peace and harmony, as is the last word in Shas. I say to all of you, let there be Ahavas Yisrael. Love a Jew because he is a Jew, whoever he is and whatever he is, because he's a Ben Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Let there be love amongst the Jewish people, and the rest of humanity will learn from us, and love will spread throughout mankind. Let there be an elevation of values which is taught by our Torah and which was spread around the world by the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And then the Almighty will help. I don't know of another generation where Jews have suffered like in the generation that I have lived. The Melchemes Gog Magog was definitely the Holocaust. I don't know of a greater era in Jewish history where there are so many tzaddikim in the world, that despite the Holocaust, there are Jews who still say Shema Yisrael, who come to daven, who adhere to their people and to their faith in whatever madrega they find themselves. I don't know of another era where our God Yisrael has worked so hard for the advent of the Messianic era. And therefore I cannot but believe that the Messianic era will come, that the better world will come. We just have to give it the last bit of an injection. And if you have come to do honor to Rebbe by your presence, then go away from here with a decision in your heart to be just a little bit better, a little bit frommer, a little bit more loving than you were before tonight. And then the Almighty will help us. And all those who came before us, Yokitzu Virananu Sheikh Neofa, Begam Adinenu Morenu Verabenu Besecham, and together with Klali soil, and together with all mankind, we will reach an era in life where the Almighty will have pity upon us. Mocha Dima Mialkul Ponim. He will remove tears from all faces. Becherpas Amo Yosir Mialkul Bohoretz. May it be fulfilled speedily through our efforts and through our work in our lifetime. His memory, His presence will inspire us to do so. When Rebbe died, I mentioned at the beginning that they said, whoever says Rebbe is dead will be pierced with a sword. You know who said that? Rabbonim. What sort of a language is that? Somebody states a fact that the Rebbe is dead, they're going to pierce him with a sword. Is that a language for Rabbonim to use? Are they worthy of that? What we're trying to say is, the whole of the essence of the belief of Jewry is that people like the Lubavitcher Rebbe don't die. They disappear physically for a while, but they live on in you, in community in Melbourne, in community in New York, in communities in Eretz Yisrael. With our help, not only spiritually will it be with us, but physically return to us through the advent of Mashiach Tzidkenu, which will be followed by Tchias HaMesim. May it be because of Mamash.
As is traditional amongst Chassidim, that a chapter of Tehillim is said which corresponds to the age of the Rebbe. And just as it was when the previous Rebbe passed away, that the Rebbe instructed that Tehillim should continue to be said for the previous Rebbe, so too we continue also to say the Tehillim which is appropriate to the years of the Rebbe, and that is Kapitel Tzadi Gimel. And therefore we call upon Rabbi Maleki to say line by line Kapitel Tzadi Gimel, and we will all follow afterwards. You'll find it on the first page. And you will please be abstaining.
Arinoi molok geus loveish, loveish arinoi ois izazor aftikein tevel baltimait. Nochein kisach omios mielomoto. Nos naharis arinoi, nos naharis kelom yisu naharis dochyom. Mikelois ma'im rabbi madirim mishbereyom adir b'mareim alinoi. Eidei secho nevna ma'oil leveis kono v'keidish alinoi la'oirech yomim.
Before we recite Aleinu and Kaddish, I'd just like to remind everybody of the verse that it says, Tzion b'mishpat tipode v'shover b'tzedakah, which means that in these days it is appropriate to say tefillos, to learn as we have done it, also give tzedakah. So later on the way out there at tzedakah pushkas. But I'd like to ask you first of all to please be seated once again, and to conclude this evening's proceedings before Aleinu, we call upon Rabbi Feldman, who is the head of the Chabad institutions in Sydney.
Just to add a few words to what my father-in-law has said. Speaking about the life's task of the Rebbe, which was to bring Mashiach in his generation, our generation. I'd like to be able to share with you a thought that many of you may not be completely aware of. Everybody is aware of the major campaign that has been undertaken as a result of the Rebbe's instructions about the imminent arrival of the Mashiach. And it reached massive proportions to the extent where the Rebbe actually articulated that it wasn't a hope, it wasn't an aspiration that he shared with all of the other great leaders of all generations, but that this indeed was a prophecy, that the imminence of Mashiach is a reality. When did he say all of this? Subsequent to the time that he wrote a will, subsequent to the time that obviously he shared his own feelings of mortality with Chassidim, subsequent to the time that he said that he has done all that he could to bring Mashiach, and now he leaves it to us. And it was then that this campaign reached the proportions where the Rebbe expressed the reality and the prophecy of the imminence of Mashiach. And it is something interesting that I saw today in the name of the Ramban. The Ramban writes that
Tchias HaMesim will be no later than Tovshin Samach, which is in another few years. So rather than this blow being one which should cause us not only distress, but a level of helplessness and depression, but we must recognize that the same way that we have always believed in every single word of the Rebbe and the prophecies which have always materialized, without any doubt, we can be assured of the same. And together with all of the Shluchim of the Rebbe throughout the world, I would like to express to you the sentiments that the Shluchim are extending and sharing with Klal Yisrael all over. That even as we mourn the passing of the Rebbe's immortal message sounds a clarion call to action, healing, and growth. The Rebbe's thousands of shluchim who have dedicated their lives to the Rebbe's vision of a perfected world, permeated with Torah and mitzvahs, are committed to carrying on their work with even greater vigor and unity. In the spirit of determination to channel grief into deeds for the living, we address jury and all humanity. The Rebbe's leadership is tangible. It is manifest in the thousands of institutions he created, the millions of lives he touched, in the affirmation of God's divine spark in every human being, and in the call for us all to intensify our positive actions in preparation for the coming of Mashiach and the imminent redemption of all mankind. Our lives, our dreams, our aspirations, in all their complexity and simplicity, in all their depth and pettiness, are neither aimless nor floundering. They are not some cosmic footnote. They are real. Life is real. Torah is real. God is real. Redemption is real, which is the finishing touch to God's glorious creation. Moses said it, so did King David and Maimonides, and every Jew who ever lived and died for his or her faith. The Rebbe made it clear for millions of people, telling us all, that man is not at the mercy of his personal prejudices or social conventions or global politics. The Rebbe taught us that we can do better, that we can bring redemption and rid the world of war, of hate, of jealousy, and of ignorance. Heal the wounds that sunder race from race, rich from poor, strong from weak, a world redeemed and perfected. That time is now, as we stand poised on the threshold of a new beginning and heightened awareness of the divine presence. It is in our power to harness mankind's unprecedented technological, economic, and social achievement to a global effort towards unity and perfection. Together, Shluchim, together with the rest of Klal Yisrael, we can do it, we will do it, and we will certainly be zoche to the realization of the Rebbe's life's dream, the revelation of Mashiach taketh umiyad.
Adonai Melech HaKol Oretz, V'yemu Adonai Chodesh Mo'echad. Gala V'skadash Me'rabo, Skada Skada Shmeira Bob Yom Jerusalem Yom Chapuz Gat B'Ron Shichei Haykhayne B'Khayne Khayde Bob Esrava Galo Bizman Karibim Romei Ezra Torah Israel B'Shava B'Israel Mishnasei Sado B'Salav B'Salosh B'Turi Shavrichu El B'Chav B'Chasav B'Shir Rasot B'Chasav Nakumos Dam Rom Yom Romei Ayisov Arbon Malta Midem Valkol Kamidei Samidem Valkol Mondas Kiberais Divasra Dim B'Tukala Savasar Hey, I'm going to come around in the Rizdo Ratman, I live in the Vichov for Common Common Mishmaim in Romain. Hey, some Raman Mishmaim, I'm telling you about this in Romain. Oyster Shalom in Ramo, Vuyasa Shalom, Malay no Alcohol, in Romain.